Lawyers. What's a law that isn't real? That normal people insist exists.
Silent scan.
In the UK, people often claim that if an item is listed for sale in a shop, then the shop legally has to sell it to you at that price. This is not true at all, as the shop doesn't have to sell you anything at any price. Often as a gesture of goodwill, shops will honor erroneous prices, but they are under absolutely no obligation to do so.
Silent scan.
Probate attorney here. I've had many people ask me when the reading of the will is going to take place. I explain to them that only happens in movies, but one of these days, I am going to have one, and hire a mysterious blonde wearing a veil to sit in the corner quietly. Then I'll tell everyone that she inherits everything, provided, of course, that she must adopt the descendant's cute but troublemaking 6-year-old child no one knew about, or she can spend the night in a haunted house, her choice. There will now be a requirement for such a mysterious lady's presence at the reading of my will, written into my will, along with a handful of burly yet solemn fellows, dressed in stereotypical G-man attire, complete with sunglasses and earpieces. One will be Russian, or at least able to fake the accent consistently, and should only be curtly acknowledged by the others. Every one of them should be entirely vague about how they knew me, except from business, and the men should all refuse to acknowledge the presence of the veiled woman, and feign terror if compelled to look at her.
Silent scan.
My father, who is a lawyer. Policemen cannot lie to you. This is false. They can, and they do, added. There's so many replies that I cannot even find some of the ones I'd like to respond to, so I want to leave a general note for those who have asked for a reference. Fraser vs. Cup is the Supreme Court ruling that affirmed the legality of deceptive interrogation tactics. In 1969, the ruling is still active. I heard you were smuggling animals. What are you? The cop. Room.
Silent scan.
People that think it's illegal to be videotaped in a public space. I saw someone on Nextdoor complaining about my reasonable right to privacy in a public place when someone was shaming 20 people standing together waiting for takeout. Sorry, that's the opposite of how it works. If big-time celebrities can't stop paparazzi from following them and their family 24/7, I have no clue why ordinary people believe that they have the right not to be caught on camera in public.
Silent scan.
Public. It's a law that exists, but widely misunderstood, is the concept of entrapment. If the police put a bait vehicle in a high-crime area, that is not entrapment. If the police are watching a bar known to overserve to see if there are impaired drivers at the end of the night, that is not entrapment. Entrapment only occurs when a government agent suggests committing a crime that you were not otherwise going to commit. The case that really set the court precedent for this was wild. FBI agents were badgering this farmer to buy porn for months, and finally he was like, sure, whatever, wham, jail time. I believe it was cleared, but damn, was that dirty.
Silent scan.
In my country, some people believe they can press charges against someone. You can't. You report a crime, and the police decide if they are taking it further. It's not up to you whether charges are brought. You may want charges brought, but the police drop the case. Alternatively, you can refuse to press charges, and the police can bring a case anyway. It's harder without the victim or witness cooperation, but they still can. You do have a right to civil cases, of course, but when people say press charges, they believe they can do this via the police. U.S. prosecutor here, in my state, there actually is a mechanism to file a private criminal complaint. Very few people have heard of it, but those that have are often mentally ill and/or conspiracy theorists. Our process is the person files the private criminal complaint with the prosecutor's office. The prosecutor can then either adopt the case and file formal criminal charges, or go in front of a judge with the person and convince the judge that the charges should not proceed. Technically, the judge could force the prosecutor to proceed, but I've never seen it happen. I've also only seen one private criminal complaint get adopted formally. When a private complaint is dismissed by the judge, the person usually files 5 more complaints against the prosecutor, the head prosecutor, the judge, the president judge, sometimes the governor, the president, etc. Then a substitute prosecutor has to come in to dismiss the complaints, which causes a whole new round of private complaints being filed. They are almost always a waste of time, but many times they are at least entertaining.
Silent scan.
The one that is the most frustrating to me, even though it's not really a specific claim that a particular law exists, more a rule of evidence, is that's just hearsay. You have no evidence. Comes up all the time, in all kinds of contexts. Even lawyers love using it when it suits them. Nothing. But hearsay and speculation. Usually. What people mean when they say that is, don't believe them. They're lying. Which, fair enough. But that's not what hearsay means. Lots of evidence is just a person talking. That's what a witness is. It's why testimony exists. It's not evidence just because it's a person talking. Hearsay just means that in most cases. You can't have person A say that person B said XYZ. In order to prove that XYZ actually is true. Hearsay. Get it? I heard B say it. It just means your witness can only talk about things they actually know about. And, extremely importantly, it also doesn't count as hearsay when person B is actually the person on the other side of the case. Person A is totally allowed to say, person B told me, yes, I will commit the crime on Tuesday. If person B is the defendant, who has been accused of committing the crime on Tuesday, you don't get to complain it's hearsay if you're the one who supposedly said the thing they heard.
Silent scan.
Freedom of speech and censorship laws do not apply on social media. If your comments or posts get deleted by an administrator, it is not infringing on your rights. Have you been arrested for your statements? Have you been prosecuted for saying something? If the answer is no, then chill out. Edit. Canada.
Silent scan.
The legal limit for back and drunk driving. There is no such thing. The common refrain you hear, especially from media outlets that have no idea what the fuck they're talking about, is that there's a legal limit to the amount of alcohol you can safely have in your system and legally drive a car. No. Simply no. It doesn't exist. There is a statutorily established per se limit in every state. This means that if you are driving and your back is over that limit, you are per se intoxicated, and the state doesn't require any more evidence to convict you. But if you are under that limit, you can still be convicted of drunk driving or driving while intoxicated. The state will have to provide additional evidence to do so. So, even though you've just had one or have it back under the legal limit, you can still get arrested and convicted of drunk driving, DWI, DUI, OUI, or whatever else your state calls it.
Silent scan.
Netherlands. Weed is legal. It is in fact not, though it is technically illegal. There are places that can sell up to a certain amount, and they're not allowed to sell to tourists, which of course still happens all the time. I mean, it's a hassle to tell who is and isn't a tourist when you've got open borders. Plus, especially in Amsterdam, it would probably take down your profits. I am not a lawyer though, so I don't know the exact specifics of the laws around weed and other drugs. Generally speaking, they're illegal.
Silent scan.